Welcome to Gabriel Music Notation. I'm your host, William Tapley, coming to you with a new and improved way to explain the tremendous advantages of the Gabriel system. In fact, Gabriel notation is 15 times easier to learn than traditional music notation. But it is turning out to be even more difficult than that to convince musicians of that fact. And I ought to know, because I've been trying to explain my new and improved and far superior notation system ever since I invented it 50 years ago. After publishing numerous magazine articles over the years, and more recently posting many videos here on YouTube, I have decided that maybe a more simplified approach will make this innovation easier to understand. Currently, talking about Gabriel's advantages in great detail, as I have done in previous videos, is like talking to a brick wall. In this program, I want to explain the many advantages of Gabriel music notation by analyzing just the first 4 notes of its chromatic scale. On your screen, you can see those 4 notes now: A natural, A sharp, B natural, and C natural, as expressed in traditional notation on your right and in Gabriel notation on your left. But first, before we study those 4 notes, let's look at the important similarities between the two systems. I've tried to keep the overall look and physical appearance of traditional notation in Gabriel notation so as not to turn off those henny pennies who have negative attitudes towards any change, no matter how great the resulting improvement is. Number 1, the notes still rise and fall on the staff lines as their musical pitches rise and fall. This logical approach was adopted by the Benedictine monk Guido d'Arezzo when he originally devised music notation 1,000 years ago. By contrast, some other proposed notation reforms print successive scale notes vertically, would you believe? Which is surely not the way to go. Number 2, you still read the notes from left to right. This is also very logical because it is consistent with practically all printed communications in our Western writing, not just music. Number 3, bass and treble clef signs remain unchanged, although their original purpose is changed because they do not indicate the locations of particular notes, such as F or G. I have retained them because I have not found any other signs or symbols that say music better than those traditional symbols. Number 4, I have also kept the original number signs that indicate time signatures, such as 3/4 time, 4/4 time, etc. Number 5, sharp and flat signs remain the same, although they are not necessary in Gabriel notation. It's likely that eventually they will be eliminated entirely. I have retained them for the time being because they can still be used mainly for music theory. Next, let's look at the important differences between Gabriel music notation and our traditional notation system. As I said, I have kept the traditional key signatures, in this case 5 sharps, even though they are not needed in Gabriel notation. If key signatures continue to be used, my system of indicating them, in this case by the number 5, instead of showing 5 sharp symbols, is a real space saver. This advantage becomes even more obvious when 6 or 7 sharps or flats are indicated. Just by looking at these 2 examples, the Gabriel system is much cleaner looking because it eliminates all those pesky accidentals. Every music student knows that the C major scale is easier to read than any other. And now, the same holds true with all music, since all 15 scales are replaced by one Gabriel chromatic scale. When Gabriel notation is finally adopted, it will be as easy to read as if all music were transcribed into the key of C major. Next, we come to the biggest and most important advantages of Gabriel music notation, as observed in the first four notes of the chromatic scale. Number one, all 12 notes, not just the 4 indicated by the way, are given unique locations on the staff. Once a new student learns those 12 note and staff conjunctions, he can read any music. He does not have to worry about sharps, flats, naturals, double sharps, double flats, or any other accidentals. Just the term accidental should tell you they are a pain in the butt. Any serious musician knows there are 15 different scales with 15 different sharp and flat combinations in traditional Guidonian notation. But with Gabriel's chromatic system, you learn just one 12-tone scale. That's why I always say Gabriel notation is not just somewhat easier to learn than traditional notation, it is 15 times easier to learn. Number 2, all intervals between successive notes in the chromatic scale are rendered accurately. By contrast, in the traditional notation example on your right, there is no vertical separation between A and A sharp, whereas the half-tone separations between A sharp and B, and between B and C natural, are used in other places as whole tone separations. The true half-tone separations between those 4 notes are depicted accurately only in Gabriel notation, even more accurately than on a keyboard itself. Maybe someday keyboard design also will be updated to look more like Gabriel notation. Number 3, Gabriel notation borrows a page from keyboard design and shows the black keys as black notes and the white keys as white notes. Also, the angular shape of black notes provides additional contrast with the oval shape of white notes. Keyboards use the same design principles, and they similarly distinguish black keys from white keys by color, size, shape, and position. You can tell at a glance, just by looking at those 4 notes in Gabriel, which are the black and white keys. Number 4, the noteheads advance up and down the clef at 1/3 notehead intervals, rather than traditional 1/2 notehead intervals. You can easily see this by observing where the staff line intersects the A sharp and B natural notes. The black note, A sharp, shows 1/3 of the notehead above the line, while 2/3 of the notehead is below the line. The whole note B natural shows 1/3 of the notehead below the line and 2/3 of the notehead above the line. These are subtle differences, and until now, they would have been very difficult for composers to express in their own handwritten notation. But with the advent of computer programs that display precise graphics, Gabriel notation is up to the task. Number 5, analogous clefs. Notice how each Gabriel notehead occupies the same staff location no matter which clef. You no longer need to learn absurd mantras like all cows eat grass or every good boy does fine. The notehead for A is always and everywhere the oval white note tangent to the bottom of the upper line of the 2 lines which are closer together. The notehead for A sharp is always and everywhere the diamond-shaped black notehead which intersects at 1/3 and 2/3 notehead intervals on the upper of the 2 staff lines which are closer together. The notehead for B is always and everywhere the oval white notehead which intersects at 1/3 and 2/3 notehead intervals, the upper of the 2 staff lines which are closer together. The notehead for C is always and everywhere the oval white note that is tangent to the top of the upper of the two staff lines, which are closer together. Number 6, another advantage of the Gabriel staff is that succeeding note heads are separated by a smaller 1/3 note head interval, and thus the 12 notes of the Gabriel chromatic scale take up very little more total vertical space than the old 7-tone traditional scale. Number 7 is unequal clef design instead of equidistant spacing, as in traditional notation. The top and bottom sections of the new staff, which are 1 1/3 note heads wide, alternate with the larger center section, which is 2 1/3 note heads wide. It's much easier to grasp notes which register on an alternating staff than those on an equidistant staff, especially in the center 2 and 3 lines and spaces of the latter. Number 8, Gabriel notation saves printing space. Although the actual height of the Gabriel staff is slightly larger than traditional notation, the reduced size and length, which results from the total absence of accidentals in both the key signature and in the body of the work, will more than offset that disadvantage. Also, measures could become more compressed as musicians become more familiar with the readability and clarity of Gabriel music notation. In conclusion, I am certainly not the first to understand that a chromatic scale is the best solution to solving traditional notations problems. But other proposals over the past several centuries have always necessitated much larger staffs, which have negated the gains of a chromatic scale. Gabriel's compressed scale and reorganized staff design overcome those obstacles, and thus show us the way to the bright future of a much simplified music notation. Now, in my next program, I will take a closer look at the remaining 8 notes in the Gabriel chromatic scale. Also, I will show you how double sharps and double flats are rendered, and I will give actual examples of music transcribed into Gabriel notation by my new computer transcription program. If you can't wait, I am currently offering 3 48-page books which demonstrate the many advantages of Gabriel music notation. Volume 1, All Keys Are Easy. Volume 2, Easiest Way to Read Music. Volume 3, Easy Keyboard for Beginners. Each book costs $21, and you can order them by clicking on the PayPal tab on my website, thirdeaglemedia.com. And don't forget to include your name and mailing address. Or you can send a money order directly to me, William Tapley, Post Office Box 291, Osage, Iowa, 50461.